Google does send 64% of web traffic, but fewer people are hanging out on google.com. Like, we don't hang out there, right? We hang out in social networks. Zooming out, what we're seeing is fewer traffic going to the open web, dark social. It's almost impossible to get correct attribution of things, which brings us to this point of zero-click marketing, where we as marketers have to figure out how to go to the right places, like how to go to the right communities, magazines, websites, right? All the sources where our audiences are already paying attention.
You're listening to the Content 10X podcast, where it's all about content repurposing. I'm Amy Woods, and I'm here to help you maximize your content and find smart ways to get your message in front of more of the right people, whilst also saving time. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Content 10X podcast. I'm your host, Amy Woods, and in this episode, I'm really excited to be talking to Amanda Natividad again. Amanda is the VP of Marketing at SparkToro, and she was on the podcast a while back in episode 266, talking all about zero-click content. In this episode of the podcast, we touch on zero-click content again and find out what's new in the world of zero-click content. But we also dive into the world of audience research, how SparkToro approach marketing, the beauty of Reddit, generative AI and how it's changing the face of marketing, and lots more. As always with Amanda, it's a fascinating and eye-opening conversation, so let's dive in. Hey Amanda, welcome back to the Content 10X podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me back, Amy.
So last time we spoke, it was quite a while ago. It was back in December 2022. So I'm so excited to find out about changes in the world of audience research, zero-click content. If we have time, I'd love to talk a little bit about AI as well. But to get started, you're VP of Marketing at SparkToro. And for anyone who isn't familiar, though, with SparkToro, please could you just explain a little bit about what it is, what it does, because our audience, largely B2B marketers, super useful to know all about SparkToro.
Yeah, SparkToro is the maker of an audience research tool that helps you better understand your audience so that you can do better marketing, right? So we can show you all the things like the websites your audience frequents, the social accounts they usually follow, the popular podcast, YouTube channels, subreddits, all those things. And more recently, we've begun to show you the search keywords or the keywords that your audience is searching for. So if you were to do a search, we show you the search keywords, but also now you can search by keyword. So what I mean by that is if you were to create a SparkToro account and run a search, you could search for people based on the keywords they're searching for. So maybe you're thinking, you know what, I really want to reach, I'm an e-commerce brand in the skincare and makeup space. I really want to reach people who know a lot about makeup, people who know about ingredients, and they have a strong opinion on something. Then maybe you could run a SparkToro search for my audience frequently uses the words niacinamide or salicylic acid or things like that, right? Where the people who are searching for those types of ingredients are probably people who are quite knowledgeable or at least somewhat knowledgeable about skincare and thus might be the perfect audience for that product.
So say for B2B marketers, what kind of insights do you think really ends up moving the needle for them in terms of the strategy and approach? Is it finding out a bit more about the keywords that people are using or the social networks? You can find out what podcasts people listen to as well. So is there any ones in particular that you just get feedback on that was really quite a significant insight that changed the way we do things?
So we've just relaunched the tool into what we call, I guess internally, we call it V2, version 2 of the product, where instead of being more dependent on social media or Twitter specifically to validate a lot of our data, we use search data, clickstream data, and a lot of LinkedIn data. other social media data as well. But I think of all the social media networks, we probably get the most data from LinkedIn. So maybe what I'll say is, because we've relaunched the tool and have newer, it's still the same tool, right? And that it's still an audience research tool, but it does a few things differently. I feel like we're at this new stage of, I'm not sure what the answer is to that, right? Because I feel like aside from having certain assumptions about what your customers are doing, that some of their behaviors change over time, right? Historically, we've thought that we are an audience research tool for any marketer, but mainly agencies. We think agencies and consultants are the stickiest audience for us because they're the ones who are running searches over and over again. And I think what we're finding out, maybe slowly, is we're not really wrong, but we're also not really right about that. Like we thought that was the stickiest audience, but it turns out that we have like maybe half or close to half of our customers are doing marketing for in-house for a brand, whether that's they're the founder of a company or they're the first marketer or they're a marketer at a brand, right? I think what we're seeing, which is a pleasant surprise to us, is we think what we're seeing now is a lot of people, maybe even a silent sort of majority or a sizable audience that's quiet about it, is they're using our tool for better strategy, like to more holistically understand their audience, what moves them, what motivates them, where they like to hang out, and then in general, using that kind of information to create a better marketing strategy, which is interesting to us because we had previously thought that a lot of it was very tactical, that it was, oh, they really want us to do better content marketing, or like they want to use these search keywords so that they can use that to inform their content marketing efforts, which is not wrong. People do like to do that. Or we thought, oh, people really want to get this PPC data that we now show so that they can optimize their PPC ads, which again, I think that's probably true, but it's not really the reason people join. And so what we're finding out is, yeah, we have some of these cool, really tactical capabilities, but I think by and large, we're seeing more and more people use our tool to better inform strategy.
And you mentioned Reddit as well. You mentioned subreddit earlier. And I know that's been part, am I correct? That's been part of the V2 that you guys have added Reddit. So I'm dead keen to know about that in terms of why you clearly invested, obviously, in adding subreddit to the platform, and what kind of feedback do you get? Because I often feel that people don't talk about Reddit as much as you think they would, but it is a really key platform, isn't it, for certain audiences and niches anyway?
Yeah, it's still, I think, probably the best social media network for niche interests, right? If you niche interest, niche expertise, if you're looking up, I think my toilet's broken, I'm sure I can fix it at home, right? Like, how do I do this? Or like the flapper thing is weird, I got to look this up on Reddit. You're always going to find some incredibly detailed reply from a very generous Redditor that will say like this long paragraph, like multi-paragraph answer on how to fix your toilet or things like that, that you could probably find on YouTube. But there's something really special about Reddit where it truly attracts the people who have a niche interest, niche expertise. And so we've chosen to focus on that. And so now if you were to search your audience, you find out the subreddits your audience hangs out in, which sometimes will show you unlikely stuff. Last time I looked, I believe when I searched for the audience of B2B marketers, I saw that a lot of them hang out in the subreddit called Data is Beautiful. So that's interesting, right? Like some B2B marketers listening might be like, of course, I go there all the time. I'm a B2B marketer. I personally don't. So to me, it's, oh, that's really cool to see this kind of interest among my community. You can also see some of the popular or most common words that come up in certain comments on certain subreddits that could help inform how you might message things, how you might have certain conversations and things like that.
Yeah, it's really useful, even if you're not planning on getting involved in terms of posting it like content or commenting within the subreddits. If you're deeply trying to understand your audience, you're really going to see the words that they use and the way that they talk and things like that. on subreddits, aren't you? To be able to know exactly where to go on Reddit is super, super useful. Are there any mistakes that you see marketers make when it comes to audience research, and not necessarily using SparkToro, but just in audience research? Is there anything that you think people get wrong with it?
I think it's still pretty early days for audience research, right? Because I don't think it's a term that most will say. It's not really a mainstream marketing term, right? Like you say demand generation, you say digital PR. Most marketers know what that means, right? They might be searching for it. But you say audience research, and I think most people might guess like, oh, doing research about your audience, but it's probably not something they're searching for actively. So that's one piece. That's the first piece I'll say. The other is, from what I've seen just in general, is it tends to be an area of marketing where either people are like, audience research, I got it, I know what that is, I need to do it. Or it's people who don't get it and they're like, yeah, audience research, so just do the marketing for me. Because I'll see that a lot too, and it might be with respect to the SparkToro tool a little bit, but people are wondering, yeah, show me the audience and then get my message out there, right? Where it's not, audience research isn't just giving you an audience, spoon feeding it to you, right? It's audience research is doing the research to better understand your audience, to understand the topics they think about, the problems they think about, the words they use to describe their problems, right? To learn about the things that influence them. That's what audience research really is.
And when you think about it, when you think about what marketing is, it is understanding exactly who you need to communicate with and then being able to communicate with them and connect with them. So it's all very closely aligned, isn't it? And if you can be extremely good at the research, it's going to help you with that. And in terms of marketing at SparkToro, what are your main marketing channels? So how do you guys tend to focus your marketing efforts? There's so much you can do, but what are the main things that you guys tend to focus on?
A lot of what we do tends to be content marketing and PR, or content marketing and PR related, right? So a lot of it is related to audience building. Ultimately, it's content marketing to us, right? So we do a lot of social media content, webinars. We write on the blog. We don't really have a proper SEO strategy. That might change. I honestly don't know. But a lot of the marketing we do is that. Sometimes maybe I would just call it organic marketing, right? Where we don't spend on advertising, but it's also not to say we don't. Because I also hesitate to be the kind of marketer who says, oh, we don't spend on marketing. A lot of our marketing spend is Rand's and my salaries, right? So I prefer to just say organic marketing, not we don't do marketing.
And you have your in-person event coming up in September, don't you? I know we were talking before we hit record that you had a big event last year, which was virtual, and now you've shifted to in-person. And I guess another, like a key aspect for you guys from, I guess my observation is community building as well, isn't it? Because I feel bringing people together, running an event, especially now that you're bringing people together in person. Was there just a feeling that you guys had that we should be the centre of a community and bring people together and get good speakers and share content in that way?
Yeah, I think there's the personal aspect of it where Rand has very much credited a lot of his career to doing a lot of events, in-person events where he would speak at them. And so I think partly he's excited about creating a platform to do something similar for other marketers. For myself, I did a lot of event planning during my time at Fitbit. I had a counterpart who did logistics and most of the marketing, but I did the content side of it. So I love events. Like, it is near and dear to me. I think they're a lot of fun to do. They're a heck of a lot of work, but it can be really rewarding. And when we've done the virtual Spark Together, we have done 2 at this point, we started to just get a little bit more interest from people who are saying like, hey, would you do this in person? Hey, I think I actually would fly out for this. So we're hopeful. At the time of this recording, we opened up registration last night because we were nervous about, and we've sold, I think, about 50 tickets already. So we're excited. We're hopeful about it. Amy, I hope you come. Bring your family.
Yeah, plan another road trip and head off from Seattle. It's in Seattle, right? What's the dates of it? And we'll make sure we mention it in our show notes and everything event.
Yeah, it'll be on October 8th. Spark Together, October 8th at 415 Westlake in Seattle. So it's a day-long event. We'll also have a pre-event mixer the night before and an after party the day of. So all the details are on our website. We felt very strongly about making sure all the important information is on the website, right? We don't have the specific agenda mapped out to the minute, but we do know that the conference day itself will be 9:30 in the morning until 5:30 in the evening. And we've given some guidance in our FAQs on like when people should fly out ideally. So everything's on the website. And the other thing is, last thing I'll say, and I'll shut up, we have different pricing tiers. So right now, the tickets that are out are the lowest price possible. And then when we run out of that, we'll go to the next tier. So the prices will go up as we get closer to the date, depending on overall supply.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's what most events do, isn't it? It makes sense. You got to do that. Yeah, it sounds awesome. Hey, just a little break from this podcast episode to ask you a question. Would you like one single place that you can go to that provides you with everything you need to be able to implement the best practices in content repurposing for your video content, your podcast episodes, and your social media content today? To help you get more value from the content that you create, get more time back, and help you reach more people than you ever thought possible. If so, then you are going to love the Content 10x Toolkit. The toolkit is full of video tutorials, templates, checklists, swipe files, step-by-step guides and more that shows you how to repurpose your content in the best ways possible today. No more Googling, no more figuring it out yourself. We provide you with everything that you need to become a content repurposing pro. If this sounds like something that would interest you, then go check out the Content 10x Toolkit at content10x.com/toolkit. Okay, and back to this week's episode. And talking about events as well, so congratulations, because I saw that you recently delivered a talk at StarStock. Am I saying it right? StarStock.
I think so.
Yeah, and I'm sure your talk was fantastic because you were always really engaging, and I can only imagine how great it was. And from what I understand, it was about zero-click content, right? And you are the person who seemed to coin that and then put out into the world, into discussion, especially in the B2B marketing world, about zero-click content. And when you were on the podcast a year and a half ago, I guess it was now, we talked about zero-click content and what the concept is of that. But we've recently delivered a talk, and things are changing all the time in the world of content. What's new in the thought process in the world of zero-click content?
Yeah, I really appreciate the question. So maybe I'll start when I coined the phrase, where we were at the time, all that good stuff. So I coined the phrase zero-click content, what was it, almost 2 years ago at this point. And I used it to describe a trend I had been seeing, which also became my philosophical approach to content, which was, and I even might have said it, I said it in conversation with Rand, just very much in passing. And he was like, wait, what was that again? Say it again. But yeah, so I've been saying like, yeah, you have to create zero-click content. And so the point there was zero-click content is native to platform, standalone content on any given platform, where all the value that there is in the message can be taken from just that native to platform post, right? Where the user doesn't need to click to leave. And it can be something as simple as like summarizing your entire blog post, like the core thesis in your LinkedIn post, in your tweet, in your threads post, where people can read that instead of your blog post and still get pretty much more or less the same value. So this was a trend that I'd been seeing. You'll see certain like other examples of it just outside of marketing, right? Like one of my favorite examples, it's like one of the oldest modern examples, which is Howard Stern's radio show, right? Like he's famously had this radio show on Sirius XM where you have to be a paid member to hear the show. But he also creates a lot of YouTube clips, right? That are like 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, that have a standalone takeaway from a celebrity interview. It's just like a little snippet of it, right? Where anyone watching can get the value in the sense of they can just watch a 2-minute clip with a celebrity interview and they'll understand it and make sense out of context. But of course, it's better if you become a serious subscriber and listen to the whole thing, right? So that's what zero-click content is. So I have been talking about this as a really effective way to grow a social media account, to increase retention in your content. And for instance, we have this, I would call the style of our newsletter a zero-click newsletter, in the sense that our SparkToro's twice a month email newsletter, all the value is within the email itself. I do link out to all the sources, of course, but if you only had 4 minutes of your day and I don't have time to click, you can still get all the value just from reading the email. And so that was another approach to zero-click content. And then, so that's where we were, right, at the time that I coined that phrase. It was an effective, efficient way to grow your following, increase impressions, increase engagement or retention, and just overall make sure that your content gets seen and consumed. Now, since then, we've done quite a bit of research at SparkToro to understand, or better understand, right, the macro trends that are driving the zero-click behavior, right? So even before I coined the phrase, Rand Fishkin did a clickstream data study a couple years ago showing that over 2/3 of Google searches ended without a click, right? Because we were starting to see more and more of the answers being put directly on google.com, right? And there's, of course, sometimes it's a good user experience, right? As a user, you just want the answer to something. If it's, I want to know Paul Rudd's age. Yeah, you don't want to read a blog post about it. You just want to know, like, he's 55. He looks incredible. So that's an example, but it's not great for publishers. It's not great for people who have anti-aging blogs about Paul Rudd's skincare, right?
No,
Not great for them.
They've got the answer. They're never going to click on your anti-aging blog post.
So that was some of the early research. More recently, we've done things like understanding dark social. There are whole platforms that are essentially hiding in its entirety, hiding the referral string to referral traffic. And for instance, TikTok, WhatsApp, Discord, Mastodon, Slack, 100% of that referral traffic is hidden, meaning it's marked as direct traffic. And look, I'm not saying there's a conspiracy or they're bad. It's not that. It's like, you can understand, for instance, Slack isn't a traditional social media network, right? Slack isn't the same as Facebook. It's not. However, it's a social networking tool in the sense that's where you drive online conversations. And so if you're sending links to people in Slack, theoretically, shouldn't that get marked as not direct, right? Because it's being referred. And so that's one aspect of things. The point just being, there's all kinds of stuff, right? There's even like more and more platforms forwarding traffic, right? It does send 64% of web traffic, but fewer people are hanging out on google.com. Like, we don't hang out there, right? We hang out in social networks. Zooming out, what we're seeing is fewer traffic going to the open web, dark social. It's almost impossible to get correct attribution of things, which brings us to this point of zero-click marketing, where we as marketers have to figure out how to go to the right places, like how to go to the right communities, magazines, websites, right? All the sources where our audiences are already paying attention, how to more effectively market on these platforms or channels. So that's where we're at today.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because if you also think about the generative AI platforms and the fact that when we go to like social media, when we go to Google, like what is Google really? It's usually just a question answering tool for us. We just put what's Paul Rudd's age and Google tells us. We want answers to questions. I know a lot of people these days who say to me, I don't go to Google as much anymore because I always have Perplexity or ChatGPT or something open on my computer. And I often tend to ask that to answer questions. And I know it's not quite the same as a search engine, because often if it's just pulling from a database at a point in time, so it's not going to tell you something that happened yesterday necessarily. But for certain information and facts and things like that, it'll answer questions. So then also, if more people that would have previously gone to search engines start going to AI tools as well, that changes everything, doesn't it? That changes the human behavior of how we get answers to questions. So for marketers, as you said, if they're not clicking on Google searches, if they're going to AI instead of going to Google anyway, etc., it's about finding the different ways then, isn't it? Like you said, of getting in front of people and connecting with people in all those ways. We're being challenged, aren't we, with how things used to be and how they are today with the AI tools. Is it just going to get to a point where, in the same way that you have sponsored returns within Google, they're going to be sponsored responses to questions in the AI tools as well? I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen too, where we'll be paying the AI tools to link to us in their answers.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I think it's a very interesting point in time because the use of AI, or the way that AI works, right? I think it's calling into question a lot of internet behaviors or things that have been done with our data so far that I think we, or the average person, right, didn't really know to think about like 5-10 years ago. But now it's bringing to light certain things that were like, wait, I don't think I like this. One thing that I find really interesting, and I don't know the answer to this, but I find it interesting that like ever since Google came out with its search engine, and for a time, it had gotten better and better in the sense of over the past, I don't even know how old Google is, 20 years at this point, maybe, but over these past decades, it's gotten better at trying to better understand your search intent in order to better serve you the results that you're looking for. It's gotten better at guessing what you're trying to search, right? There are so many times where it's like negative click search, where you haven't even finished typing Paul Rudd's name and already it's showing his age, right? And those are things in a user experience that were like, cool, it's getting better, perfect, great. But with AI coming out, or AI tools like ChatGPT, where it's showing all these incredible things, it helps you rewrite content, right? It can write in the style of somebody else. But now people are like, wait, how do you know how to do that? Why can you do that? Wait, you've been taking all the information we've been giving you and turning it into a product? I don't think I like that. But I feel philosophically, there's a degree to which it's not that different from Google search. And I'm just thinking this thought out loud right now. So this is not a hill that I will die on. It's a thought that I'm trying to form. But Google search has been using our information to try to get better and try to guess what we want. And we were okay with that for a long time. It's different, right? The plagiarism implications are very different. I'm aware. But the point just being like, I think with things like ChatGPT or OpenAI, Copilot, all that stuff, is it's making people think a little bit more about how their data is being used. I don't know that we are all being very smart about it, because I think we're all just learning, but that's why I think it's an interesting point in time. I think people are finally starting to reckon with, oh, I really should care about what these tech behemoths do with my data. I should think about that stuff.
I agree. Myself and some members of the Content 10X team went to a talk at a legal firm in our city in Manchester not that long ago. They were doing a talk for agencies on AI. It's just a legal company that had a department that dealt with trademark, copyright infringement, things like that. And they invited some agencies down and gave us a talk on the legal implications of using tools and what to think about and stuff. And it was such an eye-opener. It's a whole separate conversation, but when you're dished up information from generative AI tools, you ask it to write you some content, things like that, it absolutely does no check whatsoever that anything it shares with you is trademarked per IP. Like, it will share like IP protected content with you, copyrighted trademark content and ideas. If you ask it to come up with a great slogan for this new product. It could easily give you a slogan that's completely infringes on all sorts of IP violations and stuff. And you have to know that it doesn't check that for you. So it's for you to check. And in any kind of legal suit, it's the human's fault, not the AI's fault. So you can't say it's not my fault because an AI tool gave it, because it's already been proven in case and courts of law that the human using the tool is the human's fault. So
Right.
you can't just blame it on like a tool and say, I didn't know, ChatGPT told me to do it. But there's so much, isn't there? Because also when you feed something in, so say if you fed if you and Rand had a call about SparkToro or something, and you said, let's just pop the notes from our call into an AI tool and ask it to pick out the key points so that we can have a follow-up meeting, you've actually just given that tool some really insider information on a call that you guys had. And that tool then owns that information. So then somebody else could ask a question that only you two spoke about, but the tool ingested that information, then would give it to somebody else as an answer. Like it actually takes your information and then gives it to other people. So you could be giving call notes or transcripts to things like, hey, turn this transcript into an article. But it would then, somebody else could say, share a conversation about this, and it could literally share to somebody else your exact transcript and say,
Oh
here's the
gosh.
answer. Anyway, it's a whole other
No,
thing,
that's a
isn't
great
it? But
point.
it's just really interesting. You feed it, whatever you give it, it is going to give that to somebody else one day in another format and stuff.
I'm sure people have talked about this or someone has already, but it does make me wonder what kinds of black hat tactics we'll see that people try to do with this. They might say, Amy Wood said this. And you'll
Oh
be like, I didn't
yeah,
say
I
that.
know, I know, I know. And there's so much, isn't there? There's so much like to talk about on that whole area. And you're right. We're just in a really interesting time at the moment. Like everything you said about zero click and the way people use search engines and social and like now, like all the AI and generative AI and stuff. It's a funny point in time. And I guess we're all just figuring out the best thing to do. And it's hard for marketers, I think, to work out where to put our time, invest, and things like that as well. As you said, I think it's great that you guys are bringing people together in person and having an event and focusing on content and things like that, because you can't replicate bringing people together and having an event, can you? So like things like that, community building, being human, like always sharing more personal stories in the human side that the AI can't replicate. But yeah, it's all very interesting, and I guess we'll see what happens and try and stay on top of things.
Yeah, we'll see.
Thank you so much. I've had a fantastic conversation. There's loads of other questions that I would have liked to have asked you, but we have run out of time and I need to let you get on with your busy day ahead, I'm sure. So thank you so much. It's always great talking with you, Amanda. You're so insightful in terms of your view on things and a real leader, like a top voice in the marketing world. So it's really great
Oh
to have you
gosh.
on. We'll
Oh
share
gosh. Thank you, Amy.
we'll obviously share like a bit more information about SparkToro and also your event in the show notes. What is the best place for anyone to go and let you know that they heard this episode and that they enjoyed it? Would it be LinkedIn as the best place to connect with you, or Twitter, or?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I'm also still on Twitter, also on Threads, but LinkedIn's probably the best place.
Great. Thank you so much. It's been awesome. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that discussion and thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoy the Content 10x podcast, then why not hit that subscribe button on your podcast listening app of choice so that you can get updated when new episodes are released. And I'd really, really appreciate it if you could leave a review as well. That really makes a difference for the podcast. Also, please do get a copy of my book, Content 10x, More Content, Less Time, Maximum Results. It is the ultimate guide to repurposing every type of content, and it's available on Amazon in Kindle and paperback and also in audiobook as well. And you can head to content10x.com/book to find all the other places that you can get a copy of my book. And if you would like us to do your content repurposing for you, then we offer a fully end-to-end done for you content repurposing service. This is for podcasters and video content creators. We have our podcast 10x, video 10x, and also our specific LinkedIn 10x service, helping you to become the leading authority in your industry on LinkedIn. You can find out so much more about our services on our website. And also, please do give me a follow on the social media platforms. I share lots and lots of tips and advice on social media about content repurposing. I'm at Content 10x on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And if you try content10x.com/LinkedIn, you'll find my LinkedIn profile over there as well. All that's left to say is thank you so much for listening to this week's episode, and I'll catch you in the next one.